Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk about the latest episode of Wolfpack on Paramount Plus. It was called Two Bitten, Two Born. And of course, this is the second episode of the series, and it picks up right where we left off at the end of the first episode, which was with Blake and Harlan and Everett and Luna all discovering that Blake and Everett are werewolves, as well as Blake and Everett discovering that not only are they werewolves themselves, but that Luna and Harlan are. Does that make sense? Okay. So it picks up right there, but Blake freaks out, I guess, upon this realization and runs away from the rest of them. She runs right into the forest fire and into all the firefighters, specifically the lady that knows Luna's dad, who tells them to get the heck out of there and go home. On the way out of there in, I guess, Luna's car or Harlan's car, we see that Luna wants to talk to Blake and Everett about what's happening, but her brother doesn't want her to. She ends up finding out from them, though, that they ran into the woods to the spot where they all met because they heard a wolf howling and that they were bitten by something, which all seems kind of perfunctory because she and her brother both saw the glowing eyes and she knows what's going on already. Like, why would you have to ask, were you bitten by something? Why did you run through? She knows. She already knows. Everett goes home and his mother slaps him across the face because she's pissed that he was out past curfew, I guess, or something, or gone for a long time. And it turns out that neither he nor Blake have their scars anymore. Back at the motel, Blake has a vision of her having werewolf teeth, which again is weird because I get it. Well, I don't know. She already knows she's a werewolf. She's just in denial about it. So it's not like this is a clue to what's happening with her where she has to go, geez, what does that mean? She knows already. Anyway, she then notices that the message light on the motel phone is blinking, so she plays the message and it says, "You're not safe." Luna and Harlan go home and seem to find the firefighter lady there, who explains to them that they're still trying to find their dad. They then continue to argue about whether or not they should talk to Blake and Everett about the werewolf thing. Meanwhile, Everett tries to go to sleep but can't, and both he and Blake get the thing where their eyes light up again and seem to connect to each other psychically. And they seem to be dreaming of each other in some type of psychic dream and having separate visions of each other in each other's beds. It was kind of weird. Everett wakes up underneath his bed and finds that during the time he was out, he had clenched his fist so hard that he had hurt his hands. And it seems that he let a whole day go by without really leaving his room, and that Blake basically did the same thing. Sarah Michelle Gellar's character shows up at Everett's house at this point, and his parents leave him in the room with her and a police officer to be questioned, which is totally ridiculous because no parent worth their salt would do any such thing. Everett, who was then grounded for a week, and his friend, Connor, are studying. And Connor discloses that he also got bitten by something in the woods. So Everett asks to see the bite, and it looks like a normal creature bite. And Everett then asks him if he's gotten any weird phone calls, but Colin says no. Then Colin asks if something bit him, and he says no. So he lied. Harlan goes to the gym to distract himself from everything that's going on, but the clanging of weights and stuff really starts to mess with him because, of course, his hearing is super hearing, and it's even more super because of the full moon is close. Meanwhile, his park ranger adoptive dad is still fighting to get out of the woods, and I'm wondering why he went in the woods to begin with. In the beginning of the first episode, he comes across the forest fire in his truck, but it's far away. We don't ever see why he went in, so maybe we'll find out. I don't know. But in the woods, he has a flashback of when he discovered that the two pups that he'd found are actually human babies. Blake times herself running, and it turns out she's not super fast anymore. Sarah Michelle Gellar's character shows up to where Blake is at the motel to question her, and back in the gym parking lot, Harlan and a new friend are getting friendly, but only in Harlan's imagination. And then he seems to kind of have an episode where he's flailing about while he's having the vision. And it's like he knows what happens to him every month. Why would he go to a public place on the day of a full moon where there's going to be noise and things that are going to mess it with him? Like turned up sounds and smells and stuff. Why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. We then see Everett's friend Colin again. He's at the hospital because he'd gone there to see about getting his cast removed. And the doctor gives him a tetanus shot for the bite, and it really burns him. Everett goes to see Blake because apparently he's feeling something in response to the moon rising and suspects that Blake is as well. Luna isn't feeling too hot either, apparently, and texts her brother that it doesn't normally feel like this, and she's concerned. She's also hearing wolf growls and sort of walking around the house like she thinks someone's there. And we see that up on one of the walls is actually a portrait of a wolf, which is just goofy, really. Next, she kind of goes into a trance and has a vision of a horse busting through her front door, and she partly wolves out in the vision, but then comes back to herself and then gets a message that they found her adoptive dad, whom it would seem was visited or thought he was visited by the wolf just before he was found, the big werewolf. Back at the hospital, they suspect that Connor just had an allergic reaction to the tetanus shot, but when they give him pain meds and a whole bunch of sedatives, it takes away his pain but doesn't knock him out. Back at the motel, Blake notices that Everett and her brother seem to be bonding, which is unusual for her brother, and then decides to go off with Everett and leave the brother alone in the room. She said, "Oh, it's okay. My dad will be back soon. I'll just put the news on for him." The news is, first of all, a bad choice anyway. Second of all, it's wall to wall coverage of a disaster. People dying, things burning. Yeah, that's good. Put the little kid in front of that. That's no problem. Back at the hospital, Connor gets one of the creepy calls, and the voice asks him why he isn't running and explains that if he's sedated or whatever, the thing is going to get to him and that he needs to run. At this point, the moon is like full in the sky with some cloud cover, but you can totally see the whole moon. So why haven't they all transformed? Isn't that what happens? I don't know. Everett confesses that Blake looks super good to him and they almost smooch. But he gets a call from Connor, who is hiding at the hospital. Apparently, something is coming for him, and he tries to hobble away, but it catches up with him, and it turns out to be the werewolf. While he's running away, he ends up getting his cast caught on a chain link fence that he's trying to sneak under by virtue of the bandages around it. And in order to escape the fence, he bashes the cast with a rock, which breaks it off of his leg. And I don't know, I guess if you're desperate enough to get away from something, you'll smash your freaking broken leg to get away. I don't know. Everett soon comes upon the scene where Connor broke his cast off and finds only the broken cast. The cops show up with Sarah Michelle Gellar's character at the hospital to talk to Harlan and Luna, whose actual name is apparently Elizabeth, as well as Blake and Everett, and that's where the episode ends. I thought this episode was better than last week's. If they had combined this episode with last week's episode, minus the clunky exposition and the ending that put all the cards on the table, which they then took off the table so that they could pretend for this whole episode that they still don't know what's happening, even though they do, it would have been a better hour plus long premiere, because this is where we should be by the end of the second episode. Still with nobody seeming to know exactly what's going on, although Harlan and Luna know a little bit better what's going on, which, is only ruined by the fact that we know they already know because they said it at the end of last week. So my criticism of last week was that the answers came too easy. It came too quickly. And by the end of the first episode, they already knew what was going on, Blake and Everett, that is. And they already knew that Harlan and Luna are also werewolves. And I thought that was dumb. I thought that should have been dragged out. And so they're kind of doing that now, but only by virtue of pretending that the ending of last week's episode didn't happen. So as an encapsulated episode, this one was better. And I think if they had combined what happened in this episode with last episode and took out some of the clunky exposition in the previous episode and cut that ending and, didn't end it where everything's on the table, it would have made a decent premiere, even if it would have been like an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 40 minutes. It would have made a decent hour plus long premiere. So I don't know why they did what they did at the end of that last episode, because it clearly makes more sense for the show to be where it is now, which is at a place where it would seem that moment didn't happen, even though it did. So I don't know why they did that. Anyway, it was an improvement on last week. I'm going to keep watching it. Still not enough Sarah Michelle Gellar. We still haven't seen any of these kids turn into werewolves, which might be a good thing given that the CGI seems to be horrible. But I don't know. I'm still going to watch it. Part of the reason I'm still going to watch it is not only Sarah Michelle Gellar, but at least, Blake, played by the absolutely positively 21 entirely adult years old Bella Shepherd, is super nice to look at, I have to say. So I will be back with more reviews of this show in the coming weeks. There's only some 8 episodes in this season, so I think there's only 6 left, so it won't be long before we're done. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here for now. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.